Geocachomaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Daryl W4. Unfortunately, the Bad Cop's having some connectivity issues today, so it's just the Seer and I today talking about hiking tips for cachers on GeoGearHeads, episode 158. So we run right into that. And the Seer, for those who don't know, is a member of the Atlantic Canada Geocaching Association. Boy, I did not expect that to be a tongue-tire. Sorry about that. But also the host of Avoiding Chores, which you can find at avoidingchores.com. So thank you for joining us.
Not a problem, Daryl.
And we're going to be talking a lot about a bunch of different tips, and some from you guys, because that was our question of the show last time, is we wanted to know what your tips were for other geocachers going out hiking. Yes. So of all of the people who submitted tips, and we wish we could get to all of them, but we're not going to be able to this time, we had to pick one as the randomly drawn winner. So, Jim, why don't you let us know who that was?
Yes, so that was from Christensen, and he wrote in, correction from Antius.
Oh, actually, that's going to be a thing coming up shortly, but no.
Oh, was that the right one? Oh, hang on a second. Did I get the right one?
No, we'll get to his tip later on, hopefully. But there is a correction that we'll make from last week's show from Antaeus. But Christensen, thank you very much for entering, and congratulations on winning. You should have an email from me already waiting for you. Make sure you get that back to me, and we'll get you a prize from coinsandpins.com. And if you're looking to get anything from coinsandpins.com, remember you can use the code GearHeads for a 10% off your order. Now, let's get to that correction from Antaeus from last week. He said that he goofed on the cost of the small soda cap container, that 3 printing container he was mentioning. It's actually about 33 cents a material, so one spool would print about 120 or so of them. And he had already had that figured out in his notes. He just couldn't find for the show, so apologies for that. Well, Jim, let's jump right into the tips for cachers who are going to go hiking. And I understand that you're in a region of the world that's known for losing its hikers.
Yeah, Nova Scotia, for those who don't know, that is, the locals call it the missing hikers capital of the world. And what that is there's a lot of reasons for that. Not only the terrain is very rustic and such, it's just that the environment that we're in here, which is a little bit coastal temperatures, leads to a lot of hypothermia, a lot of issues. And with geocachers going into some of the trails exploring, they go unprepared. And what happens most of the time, any long weekend, I was a volunteer for the local search and rescue, any holiday, long weekend, anything like that, it's almost certain on Sunday you get a call, gotta go to the van, go somewhere in the woods and try to find these hikers. Most of the time, depending on the trail, you can pretty much certain it was a geocacher that was not adequately prepared and needed some help to get back out to their car, or needed some additional assistance. So that's why we call Nova Scotia the missing hikers capital of the world.
Yeah, kind of one of those deceptively difficult regions, I take it then, where it looks a lot easier than it actually is.
Yeah, and I think we actually got featured in one of those survival shows with Cody, and I don't have cable, so I forget the name of the show, but the problem occurs with the temperature. We have a lot of spikes with the temperature. So, for example, Christmas Day, we were at plus 15 Celsius on Christmas Day. Go forward 7 days to New Year's Day, we were minus 15 Celsius. So this is something that we see a lot of fluctuations. It's not unique. There's lots of other areas in Canada or in states where we fluctuate, or coastal effects. but we seem to be one of the ones where it's on the lower end of the scale, where we do have to add in hypothermia as a big factor. The temperature for hypothermia, where things start to get kind of iffy for a lot of people. For us, the average temperature, that means we're about 9 or 10 months out of the year where we have to consider hypothermia as a factor when we start to do outdoor activities. So, there's a little bit more than just going out in the woods, or especially if you're going out caching. If we're going to do a trail, we need to prepare additionally before we head out.
Right, right. So what are some of those things that you're going to want when you go out on the trail?
Well, basically, we started with the 10 hiking essentials. And when people do sort of the searches, or some of the other major retailers, they'll do the 10 hiking essentials. They'll list out 10 items. And if you look a little deeper into those 10 items, those are 10 items that a mountaineering group in California set up a number of years ago. And after a little research, I found another, I guess, a 10 essentials that was done in the White Mountains, part of a research project. And it was really interesting about this project, where the more experienced hiker you are, the more you are prepared. The less experienced you were a hiker, the more you relied on your smartphone. And this list came out from this research project. Yeah, I think it came from Brown University. But this list here, and this is a list I've adopted and kind of promoted, it just makes more sense, at least out here on the East Coast and probably in your neck of the woods too. And with the hiking essentials, obviously if you're in Alaska this time of year, your essentials are a little bit different than it is out here on the East Coast than it is in Texas here. But these 10 here are pretty awesome. First of all, we got our knife. We need a knife. We need a map, a compass, a whistle, a match or lighter, Bic lighter, a first aid kit, a flashlight, extra food, extra clothing, and a rain suit. Those are basically the 10 essentials that you want in your pack, and they don't take up a lot of room. You can, just for example here, you can have half or pretty much most of the hiking essentials in a little pouch just like this. It's not very big.
So something about the size of a lunchbox.
Yeah. And then, the rest, what you can do is your extra food, your extra clothes, and a rain suit. That's pretty much the bulk items that you need. And you can go in, and if something were to happen, you have some materials that you could make do for a few hours until somebody comes and gets you, or you're just delayed before you get out.
All right. Limax in the Q&A says that the local REI has some caches talking about the 10 essentials, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and REI is one of the ones that they push the SoCal hiking list. And you'll know which list that is when they start talking about sunscreen and sunglasses. Doesn't quite apply, that they're taking that list, which is a little bit older, but for the most part, most of the same items. There's just a few items. Quite honestly, out here, sunglasses not an essential item. It's a luxury. It's a luxury item. Or I'd rather have a rain suit than a pair of sunglasses.
Sure. Well, Fish Out of Water, who's one of the local cachers out here, has her own list that she had sent in as one of her tips. Long sleeves and pants.
Yep.
She also says sun/bug protection.
Mm-hmm.
Hers is Avon makes a great combined pump spray aerosol or wipe. Skin So Soft Bug Guard SPF 30. Extra batteries and snacks. So that's her list.
And most of those would fall into the luxuries, like extra batteries, specific clothing, gadgets, hiking poles. Kind of those items, they kind of fall into the luxuries because you still have room in your pack. Our average day pack is 20, 25, 30 liters maybe. You got lots of room to put in those items in there. So then it's just based on personal preference what you want to put in there. So, but
Sure.
still, there's some pretty good items in her list there.
Yeah, and Team Pugach says that waist packs are awesome because they can carry all the essentials and not have a sweaty back from a backpack.
That is true, and I was experimenting with a front load pack. I don't know if you guys seen them yet. They're called ribs. The
I
ribs.
haven't seen that one yet.
It's RIBZ, and I think it's ribswear.com. It's a front load pack, and I broke the zipper on mine, so I can't quite
Ooh.
show it off here. But basically, you take all the common items instead of having it on your pack in the back. You have two pockets that kind of line your ribs, and they're accessible from the front, kind of like my shirt pockets here. And you can see here, I got my two shirt pockets. They're kind of like that, but a little bit bigger. And those are the quick access items. So you can put in your your flashlight, your matches, your snack bars, or anything like that. So definitely nowadays with with the advances of design and stuff, you have all these variation of packs that make it very interesting. Like and go back to myself. I go old school. I have this leather possibles pouch as where I put most of my essentials in. So hip sack, ribs, rare. It's endless.
Yeah, well, and as cashers, we're going to probably want a little bit more space for a little bit more tech stuff, as well as maybe the extra pens and pencils and that kind of
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
And then Tejas gave us his tips, or well, his items that he brings along as tips. He says take extra batteries. 2, if you use a smartphone, have a
Mm-hmm.
portable USB charger. Very good item to carry along, especially because so many people now do use the smartphones as everything. Take some water, take some snacks, and bring a first aid kit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he knocked down 3 of the essential items there. For the battery rechargers, I did a video on this on the site a little while ago, and for some people, most people, maybe you can do a poll later on for a future episode to figure it out. But there was a couple of years ago where I'm pretty sure everybody's system involved AA batteries.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, if and I did this video a couple of months ago, my system now is all internal rechargeable batteries. So my GPS I'm using is a Garmin Phoenix internal. I'm using an iPhone internal. I'm using the DeLorme InReach communicator internal. Whatever else I'm using internal. So what do I need to charge this up on in the field? I have to dig it out here, but I'm using a Goal Zero
Oh
solar
yeah.
Nomad 7 solar pack, and the battery, I forget the name of it, but it's the 4 AA batteries charging pack that will top up an iPhone and a GPS in one charge kind of deal. Um, that is what I bring in to deal with my battery situation. Um, depending on the day you go out, and I did a follow-up video on this, where you see a lot of people, they strap the solar panel on their backpack, and they hike during the day, right? I don't know if you've seen some of those.
Right.
If you look closer, there are probably through hikers. The Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Trail. They're probably going through areas where they get sun on their backs most of the day. Someone like me or someone like you who may be doing a hike through trees and stuff, you're not going to get enough daylight to charge via your solar pack. So it's more worthwhile to take out the solar pack when you're at a base camp or where you're somewhere with a good view of the sky, so you can actually maximize your solar charging capacity, as compared to a through hiker who's walking 6 hours with the sun in the back in an open field or on top of a summit. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
So,
We do have a bunch of comments about the carrying stuff. That's always a favorite of geocachers, photographers, etc. Andy in the Q&A said that the rib vest looks like it will hold some larger stuff. But Team Pugach took a look at it and says it sounds like it's a photographer's vest.
Now, it's not a photographer's vest. There's two sizes you can get with the ribs. There's a smaller vest, which is, I think, will accommodate smaller chest-sized people. For me, I think I take a 48 chest, so I need the larger. But you can definitely fit in a lot of gear. You can fit in a lot of stuff. You do on YouTube some ribs reviews. There's a lot of survivalists or preppers or bushcrafters. They can fit a lot of stuff in that, so it's not necessarily a photography bag for sure. So
Yeah,
you
I
can
was
you
thinking.
can you can definitely put a camera in there, but you can definitely put cash repair kit. You can put in, God, geez, anything.
Sure.
It's big. It's a lot of room. I forget the capacity on the regular one, but it's pretty big.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the geocachers like the fishing vests, which is the
Yeah,
same kind of concept as the photographer's vest, but just generally not quite so big.
I
Uh,
I I think the ribs. Personally, I think the ribs is a better option for the geocachers who opt for the fishing vest, only because you have maybe 4 pockets compared to the 6 or 8 that you would have on a fishing vest, but the capacity is way better, way better. It's kind of like having the shoulder mount harness for cop shows. You get your you get your gun underneath your shoulders. It's kind of, you have to put it on kind of the same way. You got buckles. It's kind of impressive when you feel all tactical when you do it. So you know.
well, there are all those tactical clothing lines, and the vests included.
Yeah.
But Land Monkey actually says that he prefers the OGO, I think is how it's pronounced, OGIO flight vest, which combines Space Force hiking essentials and geocaching supplies.
Ooh, okay. I haven't heard that brand before, but
Yeah, so there's a bunch of options out there, but really, that's like the least important way that you have to dress yourself. There's much more important things that you have to consider when you're going out on the trail.
oh yes. Biggest thing is to dress appropriately. Wear the proper footwear. I have I can't tell you the number of times I've seen new geocachers, they go on our website, and I've just discovered geocaching. I can't wait to go out, and they're wearing the Walmart $10 white tennis shoes in a backcountry trail, wilderness trail. There's rocks, there's granite, there's moss, there's issues. Couple of those situations, there's a lot of slippage, a lot of broken bones. Dress appropriately. Dress in layers. Winter, this time of year, ironically, we talk about dressing in layers. We can dress in layers depending where you are most of the year to regulate body temperature. So it is a very good tip to be able to dress in layers, know about your base layers, your mid layers, your outer layers, so that you can not only hike comfortably, not have to sweat or be wet, but be comfortable. And if it does get cold or the rain does come, you have stuff in your pack that you can slap on, and you can continue your hike, no problem.
Yeah, and GC Doc wrote in saying that wearing supportive hiking boots was his tip. DSP Music actually had something I thought kind of interesting. He always has all-purpose gloves on hand,
Mm,
always.
mm.
You never know when you're going to need to grab hold of a dirty, sticky root or tree branch for support. Stick your hand on that knot hole or stump and want some extra gripping power to open that stuck cash container and more.
Great tip from the gloves. I've never had to wear it. However, I am a big fan of the stick or billy club to pry stuff open or to knock things around. Especially doing, you're walking on the trail and you see this nice tree root with a nice big hole in it. You can just see your hand going in there, and I find something. But you want to poke it around to make sure there's nothing that comes out. So.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, as Head Hard Hat says, poke it with a stick. Now, you were mentioning the layers, which is a big deal, and that kind of goes back to something else that you really need to make sure that you're going to pay attention to is the weather.
Oh my God, yes. Taking a look at the forecast of where you're going to be is probably the biggest tip you can do because that will dictate what you're going to bring in terms of extra clothing. Um, and also, you're going to pack accordingly, right? So, for example, if you're going out for a hike and you're going to go for a long hike, you brought some extra food, extra water, not a lot of room left in your pack for an extra sweater or anything like that. Go on the website, go find a weather station, you look at the forecast, looks clear, no sign of rain. All right, I can maybe leave that extra fleece here, or I do have my rain suit from the 10 essentials. I'll just make do with that. The other thing too is using your GPS to forecast the weather. I'm in the process. I'm going to hopefully have a video up on Sunday on my website. Talk about how you can use your barometer on your GPS units to forecast the weather. And a lot of us will have probably, if you have an electronic compass on your GPS, a lot of the Garmin's and Magellan's and the InReaches, or DeLorme's I should say, they do have an electronic compass which have the altimeter barometer thingy, but basically you can still use the barometer, and a lot of them will have a graph or some other feature that you can monitor the air pressure. And by knowing some general rules of thumb on air pressure, you could be able to forecast any upcoming storms or weather events within a 6-hour window. So weather is important.
Yeah, yeah, and I've run into so many people who have been out just even on a regular nothing of a day hike, and I've even done this myself sometimes where I'll underestimate or overestimate the temperature and just end up ill prepared.
And I said this earlier, hypothermia is a big problem here. This is when our body temperature goes a couple degrees cooler than the average core. And I said Nova Scotia, we're in that temperature where 10 months out of the year it's a factor. It's a lot more complicated to get our body temperature back up to normal. If you look at the reverse, hyperthermia, right, when we overheat ourselves, it's pretty easy what we need to do. We need to stop what we're doing, get under some shade, drink some water, shed layers, jump in the river, get cool. Pretty basic stuff, but when we're cold, hypothermia, we have to do a lot more work to build up the internal heat. So, knowing that, if you're the type of person that, gets cold or wouldn't mind that extra fleece or extra rain suit or extra pair of socks. That's the other thing that I didn't mention here. After you're done doing a whole hike, some people put a little stuff sack in their car with a fresh set of clothes, fresh t-shirt, fresh pair of socks and or shorts, and you just change at the trailhead and you can drive back home kind of refreshed.
Yeah, always a nice thing to have. Well, let's move on though. What's the next thing that you'd recommend cachers do when they go out hiking?
Tell someone where you are going. Tell them where you're going, what trail you're going to be doing, and what time you expect to be back.
That's almost exactly what Wet Coaster had sent in, is if you go alone, let someone know where you are going and approximate times. But I would say that even holds if you're not going alone, if you're only going with a small group, probably even if you're going with a bigger group, always let people know when where you're going and when you're expected back.
Yeah, exactly. And the main reason for that is if something were to happen and a loved one are saying, all right, this is not right. I need to call the authorities. I need to call search and rescue to come look for you. One, she knows where you are. know where you're going. That gives the search and rescue teams a plan to do their search management, because they'll probably use certain models, search grids or search models, based on the time or the past, so that they can focus their efforts on the higher probability that they'll be able to find you within a few hours. When you don't tell people where you're going, or you veer off the plan by bushwhacking around and stuff like that, if you need help, it will take longer for search and rescue teams to come and get to you. So telling people where you're going, what times, all that all helps with the equation if the event you need help to get out.
Well, and Daddy Ortho mentioned invite friends. It's better in pairs.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I completely agree with that.
There's no better fun to go out caching with a group and just enjoying a day with your buddies.
Yeah, and I think that was actually the next point you were going to bring up is go caching or hiking with a buddy.
Bring your buddy, make a day out of it. It's not all about caching. If you're going to a new town or a new area, do a little extra Google searches to find out what's a good place to eat, what a good place to have a beer. If you're an adult, they're allowed to have an adult beverage. Is there any other attractions or shops? There might be stuff that you might discover for the next time. A lot of the attraction with geocaching, you are brought to areas that you didn't know about. You're learning things as you go and find these caches. So that's always fun. Bring a buddy.
Another one that you have here is to waypoint your car.
Yes. So once you're ready to go out and hike or head out for the geocache, waypoint your car. Now, a lot of people say, well, just do a backtrack. If you're in winter this time of year and you're going out for the cache, the snow starts flying and you lose sight where you're going, you can use backtrack on your GPS to redo your steps to get back to your car. But really, the reason why you want to waypoint your car is you want the quickest way back out from the woods or from an area, straight line, and that's why you want to do it, regardless if you're on track or not. That is something that we call a safety bearing. So if you're out in the wilderness, if you start doing you're bushwhacking through the woods, you're lost, and you look at your GPS. Where am I from the car? Hey, I'm 200 meters straight line. If I go this way, I have to do a kilometer or a mile by following the trail. I can be in my car in 2 minutes. I think I'm going to go straight through this way, through the safety bearing. So that's one of the main reasons why we say waypoint your car.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Geo_Cacher said, and Limax in the live Q&A says he always forgets to waypoint his car. It's something easy to forget, and I quite honestly don't do it nearly as much as I should as well.
Now, the other thing, the backup for that is when you do your track file, the first track point is usually on your car when you first turn on your GPS. So you could use your track file, create a waypoint at the first point of your track that is technically close to your car. So you could do that too.
Yeah, and I do like to use the tracking on the GPS screen to do that. But on the smartphones, you usually don't have the option to do that.
Nope.
All right, so what are we going to talk about next?
Estimating time. We talked about that earlier. Estimate time within your abilities. This is the biggest thing I've seen over the years as we see new people do geocaching or trying out more adventurous caches or loops, is the proper estimation of the time. So we'll break it down simple. If you do a line of sight from point A to point B to your cache, yeah, it looks like it's a kilometer, 2 kilometers, 20 minutes tops. But the actual trail is this zigzag of lines that might take you 2 hours. Is that within your abilities through heavy elevation? It's not flat room pavement or or crush rock. Um, be honest with your abilities. A lot of us are probably not 18, 20, 21 years old, so we might be a little bit out of shape. Um, but that's fine. We pick the caches that we want to do that we're comfortable with. If there are some caches that are a little bit more adventurous, then you pace yourself to be able to do them. As an example, I was setting up geocache programs at a couple national parks, Fundy National Park, Kijimikujik, Lewisburg, etc. And one of the one at Kijimikujik where it was a little bit more adventurous. It was designed as a 2-day excursion. You had to do, a lot of people will want to do all the caches as fast as they can, but these ones were done specifically. You needed 2 days. You needed that extra time to do it. You couldn't do it because you had to not only hike, you had to paddle across lakes, and you had to portage. So, is that within your abilities? Not if you want to do it in 4 hours, but if you want to do it over 16 hours, more than likely. So, always plan a little bit longer than what you expect to do.
Okay, we got a great comment here from Wet Coaster in the live Q&A. He says he's in shape. Round is a shape.
Round works great downhill. I'm a big proponent of downhill trails. I like stuff that glide. No, but seriously though, it's a lot of people. For example, one of the loops that I had set up in one of the parks was a 42-kilometer loop, and you had to do 32 kilometers of mountain biking first, and then the rest of it was just little out and backs, 2 kilometers here, 800 meters here, and another kilometer that way on relatively flat terrain. It got a lot of complaints from a lot of cachers who thought that was too much to do biking, but when they got on site, it wasn't a flat terrain. It was a rocky terrain. It was the terrain was a little bit more complicated. It required a little bit more effort to do it. So some were able to do it easy. Others had to take their time to do it, and others flipped over their handlebars and took a little bit extra time to do it.
All right, well, moving on, Wet Coaster also says that he likes to send a glimpse to someone to watch and check up on you. And that's actually a common theme that we had. CJ Richard made the same kind of comment, and there were some of the others along there. And that's a great idea, but the problem is you have to have the cell phone data, the mobile phone data to make that work.
Yeah, and I know for a lot of areas, cell phone reception is not an issue. Out here in Nova Scotia or in a lot of rural areas, Maine, areas like that, you can go 100 meters off the highway and no service. It's try to do an X-Files episode out here. You can't. You just can't do it. So you have to use other types of communication devices. So the one I've been using for the last few years, which works out pretty good, and Dara, I think you used one version for a little bit, the earlier version, a DeLorme InReach, the two-way satellite communicator. Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive than the Spot, but you know what? It's two-way and it's a lot faster. This is something that I use almost all the time exclusively, even if I do have a little bit of reception, just so that I can have the the message thread when I send a text to my wife to say, I'm at the trailhead, I'm going to start the trail now. She gets the text, she knows the location because the GPS location is embedded, and then I send it, and afterwards I'm back at the car. She says, okay. It could be a half an hour later. I'm almost home, and the text comes in, on the phone that, hey, I got your messages or whatever. It happens. So, do a little bit of research as to what are your communication options out there, for cell phone. If not, if you want to do a lot more wilderness kind of hiking, a lot of exploration that way, you may want to look at some of the other devices out there to give you a little bit more coverage.
Yeah, and JR and Juju say that you should not expect to have cell phone service. And Bear actually wrote in with quite a bit of information. And if anyone's listened to the show for a while, they'll know he was here talking with us about caching offline. But when you're outside of cell phone range, you're not going to be able to load that cache data. So make sure to load it into your GPS
Yep.
before you go into your smartphone, cache it so that you're all ready to go.
Yep. Yeah, I'm the type of guy that only loads up the waypoints. I don't load up the hints or anything like that, especially because I use the Garmin Phoenix, so I can only load up the waypoints anyway. But, have everything loaded on. You got to do it.
Well, and you mentioned the Phoenix there. The Land Monkey had said, or had asked, I should say, if you were wearing the Garmin Vivo Fit.
Yes, I am. I'm just testing that out. I'm just doing a number of tutorials for the website right now. So I saw the announcements from Garmin at the CES trade show this week, and I'm very interested in the Phoenix 3 and the Vivo Active, which I think the Vivo Active will be a very interesting device for the casual runners that still want to have that daily tracking information.
Well, and the Epix is the one that caught my eye because that one actually has the ability to do things like topo maps on it.
Yeah, and I'm not as keen on that one, only because the topo maps for Canada have traditionally been utter garbage.
Yeah.
So, and I did a tutorial for how to load a wireframe map on the Phoenix here, and it sucks, and I always am eager when I go to the States. I can load up some nice quality maps on whatever device I have, so I can actually see what's going on, other than dealing with the half-baked stuff that we can usually put on.
Yeah. Now, like Land Monkey, I'd also wanted to make sure that people know if they're going out in coastal areas, know the tides.
Yes. Yes.
It's another one of those regional things that you'll have to watch out for. And I'm sure there's other things in other areas. Maybe if you're caching around a volcano, you have to be cautious of the lava flow schedule or something.
Hunting season.
Oh, excellent! Yes. Yes.
Just right now, yeah. I think we're done the hunting season, but it's really funny that we have what we call crown lands. The government or the state, provincial, they own the land, but you can hunt and trap in it in certain areas. So for the last couple of months, you got to wear the hunter's orange, on your head or whatever, because you don't want to get shot at. So.
No, that would be very bad.
Yeah.
Well, you actually had another tip in there that I thought was very good. You want to touch on that one?
Yeah, the last tip that I had here is basic map and compass skills. We rely a lot on our devices, and sometimes, hey, let's say you drop them in the lake or in the river and it floats away. What are you going to do now? You got to revert back to the backups, which is a compass and a paper map. And knowing how to read a topo map, you don't really have to get into the finer details, but knowing what the contour line is, knowing what the river looks like, knowing from the contour lines which direction the river flows, so that you can establish a safety bearing to get to the nearest road or railway, so that you can get back to civilization. Basic navigation with your compass. So if you know that that mountain or that antenna tower or some other landmark, once you get there, you can get out. You need to know how to navigate with your compass with that to get out. Very simple skills, very essential.
Yeah, not Team Pugach, excuse me, Team Pugach in the live Q&A said that he never learned how to read a topo map. Is there a good resource to learn? And I never really learned to read it either. I just kind of picked it up,
Yes.
through experience, I guess.
And same thing too. I kind of learned it here and there, and I was depending on whatever classes and when I was joining up search and rescue, we went through a number of sessions to learn how to do that. YouTube is probably one of the best resource to do how to read the topo map. I haven't done any videos on that, but I've done maybe a few more advanced topics on the topo map. But the basic readings of it you can probably find in a lot of orienteering websites. The activity orienteering, I'm not sure if it's big in the States or not. It's relatively popular out here in Canada and Europe. Europe it's huge. um, that's where you have it's the old school geocaching, right?
Oh yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, so
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure if you go to any orienteering club or association website, they would probably have those resources how to read a topo map. The only difference is that their maps is at a higher resolution than to what we're going to be using, which is
Sure.
a little more zoomed out. So
Yeah, they're using their contours and things, and they'll actually have other things, not just the contours, on those maps, so that they can operate off just those markers and be hyper accurate, so they know where they are in the world.
yeah, like the biggest thing is rocks, and other obstacles. They'll be on the map. Not a lot. The only big difference compared to some of the topo maps that we might get our hands on is the scale and you um, estimating distance. How
Well,
they'll do
no, I've heard that a lot of them will have things like markers on them that you won't have on the topo maps. Power lines are almost always on both, but things like an abandoned um, tower won't necessarily be on a topo map, but will definitely be on most of the orienteering
it.
maps.
Yeah, but that depends on the layer, the GIS layer. So if you go to uh, online maps, for anybody who's GIS or play with OpenStreetMap, you'll be able to get the digital version of the topo maps and all the layers to go with it. So a topo map has like 20, 30, 40 layers. So the hydrography, the water, vegetation, buildings, power lines, buildings, parking. It goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And we just pick and choose, like for orienteering, what they want to show on the map. So people who want to collect the digital maps and make their own maps, getting into cartography, you can add those layers, very easily.
And Dune Buddy actually said that he learned to read maps in the Boy Scouts way back when the merit badge books were very basic, and it's a good place to start.
There you go. Another great resource.
And they do have an orienteering merit badge, which Limax brought up. Uh, but Wet Coaster also says it's a good thing to go out with a friend and help learn the map reading skills from someone who knows about it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Any of your buddies who have military background, odds are they went through a map and compass training, so they would probably know. I think one of the the comments in there you had about UTM in there.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's
That actually comes from Jersey Eric, so why don't we read that real quick since we're talking about it.
yeah.
Learn the difference between UTM and latitude-longitude cords, since UTM must be so important to hiking. The Boy Scouts Merit Badge Handbook for Geocaching requires the Scouts to understand UTM and to plot a UTM waypoint on a map. I personally think this is I personally think that this understanding is not necessary for basic geocaching and perhaps irrelevant to 80 to 90% of the geocaches that scouts or anyone else might find. I can only conclude that UTM must be very important for rough terrain hiking or what I would consider extreme hiking. Since I only hike short distances on relatively flat terrain, I must have an understanding of when UTM, or I don't have an understanding of when UTM would be useful, but it must be useful to some hikers.
All right. Let's go back to the basics. When we take a GPS out of the box, take an inReach out of the box, take an iPhone out of the box, the coordinate system, the math to put our coordinates is, WGM, right? It's the
WGS 84?
84, yeah. So think of it your phone number format, right? Instead of like your area code dash whatever, so it's lat long that way. UTM, is it's a decimal based system, right? Grid system. But when you use UTM, you also got to change the datum, the spheroid, the mapping algorithm to do that. So we're changing our defaults on our devices with UTM. UTM uses NAD83 as their math, as the datum for that. So when you use it, if you're going to use UTM, you kind of have to go all the way in, because a lot of the topo maps will use NAD83 as the datum, or some other, projection, so that the coordinates are not the same. You can't just, when you get a waypoint, and that's one mistake that we learned in the early days of geocaching, is that when you download a waypoint, put it on your device, and for giggles, if you were flipping, datums or whatever, it's not the same place that we're talking about, right? So when you're dealing with the maps, UTM is really useful in terms of finding your position on the map, but in terms of geocaching, sticking with the defaults when you're out of the box, which is lat long and WGS 84, that's good enough. You can copy and paste coordinates into Google Maps, or in lat long or in decimal format. It knows where to go, right?
Yep.
UTM might have a little problem with it.
Yeah, and we did talk a little bit about the different datums and stuff like that on the Getting Good Chords show, but it really is pretty confusing. But it basically just goes down to changing your reference points, and if you're working off different reference points, it's not going to work. It's like if someone tells you red is green, you're not going to understand that.
Exactly.
Well, I think we've given folks a lot to talk about and think about here, but you have a whole ton of good references on your site as well, so why don't you give people a quick rundown on how they can find that?
They can find me and all the stuff here on avoidingchores.com. That's our website where we focus on the outdoors and craft beer, because you get thirsty after a day of hiking on the trail. So, but we do focus on hiking, outdoor skills, and GPS tutorials. So anybody with a Garmin or a running Garmin, we do tutorials on that, and so that you can get to know how to use your device a little more than just with geocaching. And I upload or post a new post every Sunday. So you can find that. So this week, hopefully, it will be the one about the barometer, how to forecast weather with a barometer with your GPS, and that should have a little bit more information on there for you.
Excellent. And any parting thoughts that you might want to share before we move on?
No, I think it's pretty good. A lot of the commenters had a lot of great suggestions, and that's what it is. It's down. It's identifying the essentials. And then if you have room for some luxuries or some added items, add them to it. So, but the biggest thing is go out, have fun, bring a friend if possible, just enjoy yourself.
Excellent. And we did have a lot of great comments come in from the last questions. I would have loved to have read the comments from Christensen, because he did have a really, really cool long story there for us. But it's time for the next question, and this time it's question 159, and we have a GeoFleece gift certificate. So get your email ready to geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com and title it Question 159. In that email, include your geocaching.com screen name and the zip code for Munsey's headquarters in Texas. You have till 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on January 14th to get that right answer into geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com with the title Question 159 to be entered into the drawing for that gift certificate from GeoFleece. And anyone can use the discount code GF01FS during January for free shipping on your order of GeoFleece. And coming up, we do have a whole bunch of great episodes, and you might notice that next week's episode ties directly into this question, because next week we're talking with Munsey once again about their new home and much, much more. Then on the 22nd, for episode 160, we have GSAC 2, and we're happy to be talking with XPunkX, my old partner for the Geocaching podcast. Then MOGA 2015 is the topic for January 29th, and we'll be talking with a couple of guys from the MOGA committee then. But more exciting probably is going to be February 5th when we talk with DeBear and Mark of the OB podcast on Randomize 31, our first randomized show for 2015. So you can probably expect a little bit of CS news there. And for all of you puzzle fans, February 13th, we're going to be talking ciphers with Russ Accent. Man, I'm having problems talking now. With Russ, the author of the Cliff Knowles series. And I also have to put out a big thank you to Billy Robson, CJ Richard, Going Caching Crew, Jersey Eric, Ginta29, Kid Vegas, Kitty Catch Limax, Native Texan, Team Pugach, Subway Mark, Wazong, Wet Coaster, The Wooden Radio, and all 34 of the GeoGearHeads patrons for support of the GeoGearHeads. Without your support, we would not be able to keep these shows coming. Thank you so much. And if you get any value out of the show and can afford to drop us a couple of bucks a month, please head over to our website and click on the Patreon link for more on that. Check the Cachemaniacs website for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads produced by Chris Oppenauer and Daryl Wanberg. This show is copyright 2015 by Daryl Wanberg. All rights reserved.